You can see from our chart of all the judges, we've just finished with Gideon up to 8:28, so now we're in 9. But I don't know if you can notice this, I don't know if you can see, but this is chapter 10. We're skipping a whole chapter of no judging. But doesn't mean it's going to be good. It's still bad. So, just keep that in mind when we are going through this section. Sections! Today we've got section 1, verses 1 through 6, the rise of Abimelech. It sounds epic, it's pretty brutal. But first 6 verses says this, and Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them, and with all the family of his house, of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it is better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. And his mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem all these words. And their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, He is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-berith, where Abimelech hired vain and light persons, which followed him. And he went up to his house, father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons, upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, who was left, for he hid himself. And all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Millo, went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. So, first 6 verses, pretty aggressive, okay? Basically, we have Abimelech's rise to power, the rise of Abimelech in this situation. And it all kicks off basically with Abimelech, who is Gideon's son, showing up and saying, I want to be the guy. Now, I don't know if you can remember back in chapter 8, Gideon was approached to be asked to be king, and Gideon turned it down. And they said, let's make your family a dynasty. Let's make you a king, and then your son will be king, and then your son's son will be king. So this could have been done and set in stone before this all had to happen. But Gideon refused it and gave the glory back to God, gave the power back to God, gave the position back to God. And here is his son now, Abimelech, forcing basically his status to rise, and basically forcing his uncles to submit, and like his people around him to submit to him, okay? So you have Abimelech, the son of Gideon. He went to Shechem. So he was the son of Gideon. Another name, can you remember the name, what it means, Abimelech? My father,
the king.
The king. My father, my king. So it's kind of like this weird thing that Gideon did here. He's named his son saying, hey, Gideon was the king. But Gideon chose to turn down it gets confusing, right? So we can see God had not really established a hierarchy or a monarchy in Israel, minus the fact that he was meant to be in charge. God was meant to be the guy. There was not like a monarchy. There was not a queen or a king sitting in a palace there. The whole point was meant to be God's in charge, follow him. And there were 69 other sons of Gideon around, okay? So you got Abimelech, and then you got 69 other brothers who might also have wanted to be king. We never know, because it never says anything about that, okay? So we have this idea now that Gideon turned down this role of king of Israel. He turned down the throne. He made this one last gasp effort before he turned to idolatry himself of saying, hey, we need to give God the glory, God the power, God the position, and then idolatry. And that idolatry has crept into Israel during the last years of Gideon's role as judge, and now it's open to everyone. And Shechem was inhabited by the idolaters of Baal. And we can see that kind of pattern constantly happening with Israel, right? We've done this a couple of times where it says like the circle effect. They worship God, they get comfortable, they turn away from God, they fall into idolatry, things get really bad, they cry out to God, God sends a judge. And this is kind of the pattern that happens throughout the whole book of Judges, and the process that follows suit of Israel crying out and making mistakes and crying out and making mistakes. Eventually you kind of go like, guys, come on. Are we not picking up the pattern here? You're not following what's going on? So he goes to his mother's brothers and communed with them, right? The brethren. And all the family of the house saying this one thing. Pick who's going to be in charge. Everyone, all of us, all 70. Do you want 70 kings? Or one? Why would you want 70? Even right now, you think about that, like, would you want 70 presidents? Or one president of America? It's hard enough for anything to change anyway with one. Imagine how tough it would be with 70 and then having to go through the whole process. So he's basically saying there, like, come on, there's an easy option here. One king. I'm your brother. I'm your flesh, I'm your bone. Come on, pick me. Or everyone. It's either me or 70. Again, reminder, Gideon rejected the kingship that was asked of him. And because of that, there wasn't really a place for Abimelech to ask of this. No one said that he should be king. But Abimelech kind of rose up out of this and said, you know what, I'm just going to take it anyway. I'm just going to take it. You kind of really see the desire of the heart here. The position, the status, the role, the power, all go into the brain, you know? Sin does that. That slipping into idolatry, slipping into false worship of false gods, and the lies that creep in that you're allowed to do whatever you want. And now Abimelech's going, I want to be king. Well, guess what, Abimelech? I want to be Superman, but I don't go up and say that to people, right? It doesn't work that way. And we'll see what happens to Abimelech later on. But he goes for it. Guy's got confidence. Guy's got courage. Steps in there, says to everyone, me or everyone. But we don't really hear of any of Gideon's sons coveting this title. But we do of Abimelech, right? In verse 3, we hear basically their hearts, okay? Mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem, all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech. For they said, he is our brother. He convinced the men, the brethren. The brethren went out and they convinced the men of Shechem. One person telling many, follow me. Why? Because I'm this. I'm your flesh, I'm your blood, I'm your family, I'm your brother. Choose me. And they were like, we're really convinced. So we're going to go out now. And in the ears of all the men of Shechem, all these words in their hearts were inclined to follow. Why? Because there wasn't a judge. Someone wasn't put in a position here after Gideon to straight away take the mantle. Do you know why? Because God's just done some incredible things. God's done some amazing things for Gideon here. Remember the 32,000 that went down to 22,000, that went down to 10,000, that went down to 300 men. And you go, okay, that's a pretty incredible battle. Why do we forget the goodness of God? Why are we so quick? Because remember, even at the end of that chapter, Gideon's remembering, then he's like, oh, I could get some loot here. I could take some earrings. I could get some gold out of this. I can get some plunder, some loot, some swag, right? And he makes himself rich. He goes home, and he takes himself a lot of wives. And he has a lot of sons. And he has this place, and he has this whole power trip, and then he falls into idolatry. Because he forgot the goodness of God. So, what's amazing about this is the heart of these people is following exactly the same thing now. This guy's all the talk, we should follow him. This guy knows what he's doing, we should follow him. This guy seems like the guy. That happens in real life now. That's going to happen this year. We've got elections coming up, right? And we're going to have to decide who do we want to lead us, and we're going to be convinced one way or the other. He's the guy. I want to tell you, no one's the guy. No one is the guy. It's got to be God. It's got to be. It's not human. It's not possible that way. So even when you think, well, America's going to do it right this year, we're going to get it right, and things are going to change. Yeah, maybe. But I tell you, there's still going to be all the struggles because God's not right in the middle. Get God back in, and we'll see things get sorted out again. Get God right back in the center, and things will change. This isn't a political thing. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I'm just saying, humans standing up and saying, I'm the guy, let me lead you, that should be concerning. Because unless you know that person is following God wholeheartedly, don't follow him. Just don't. We moved from Bellingham down to Spokane, and that doesn't seem like too much of a move. 300 miles, whatever it is. I don't know, something like that. That's a big move. Well, to go from England to America is 5,000 miles. You've got to be trusting something here, okay? My wife had to trust my heart and my decision and my following of God to say we should move to America. And then we had to trust that Pastor Josh is our pastor to take a job here at Spokane Baptist, that this was the right place. Obviously, God's leading and God's blessing and God opening up doors. But is Pastor Josh the guy following God here? Is he pursuing God or is he not? Because if not, then we shouldn't be doing this. Don't follow people who aren't following Jesus. Okay? It's a real simple way to put it, but that's the whole point. So their heart was inclined to follow Abimelech. At the city of Shechem, Abimelech convinced these people, and they went and convinced other people. He's got his party, he's got his crew, he's got his men. They're all following now. And this is part where it gets dark. Verses 4 and 5. Abimelech murders his brothers. He murders them. Notice that what happens here first is they give him, all the people that he's convinced, those 70 people, give him 70 shekels of silver from the temple. What temple? Who is it?
I think it's Baal.
Yeah. So Baal Berith. Okay? Baal Berith meaning Baal, the god of the covenant. What a slap in the face. What a slap in the face. So the relatives of Abimelech on his mother's side gave him startup money, basically it would seem. Like, hey, you want to fund a rebellion? Sure, here's some money, go for it. This will give you food, this will get you armor, this will get you some swords. Behind every rebellion, you've got to have a little bit of cash. Well, here it is. Here's your plug-in money, let's go. They've got him set up. And he did this, but it's crazy. They take money from the temple. Money for the temple to their fake God. And go, why don't you use this? You know what's really funny about that? When people robbed and took ownership of the Ark of the Covenant and they went to go and take stuff out of the Ark of the Covenant, what happened to them? They got killed. Because you open up the Holy of Holies, you get all type of holy in your face and you ain't holy and you die. Yet they've taken the riches out of this false God's temple, still declaring their God. Hey, Baal Berith, he's a God, he's a God, he's a God. He didn't do anything about this. Come on, there's another sign here that it's not true. These guys would have all been told the stories of Joshua, of the Exodus, of literally carrying the Ark of the Covenant across the rivers, the losing possession of and regaining. They would have known all of this stuff. They would have sat around the fires and grandpas and great-grandpas would have told stories. But here they are. Take this money. If they had true faith in that God, they would not have touched that money. They wouldn't have touched it. Because that wasn't their money to take. Side note, but I'm just saying, it's a funny thing to think about, okay? So, from the temple, and he took this money and he hired who? What does it say he hired? At the end of 4 there, Abimelech hired vain and light persons. Vain and light persons which followed him. What's funny here is different interpretations of the Bible, different commentaries as well. Yeah, they say worthless and reckless men. That's a couple of the commentaries they said. Vain and reckless men. That idea of people who are looking where? They're not looking at God, they're looking at themselves. I want to look good. I want to be this guy. And he basically hired yes people. He had this crew of people who'd walk around with him and be like, yeah, this sounds like a great guy. We're going to follow you. We're going to just say yes. And you know more dangerous than having a yes man by you, by the way. If you're doing something and they're not going to say no, and they just every single time they say yes. Do you think we should do this? Absolutely. Do you think it's yeah, you're so smart. Yeah, and then when it all comes crumbling down, who's not there? That yes man. He's gone. Why? Because he was never there in the first place, right? He's a placeholder. He's not a real friend. He's not a real person to have around you. He hired these people. That's the funny thing about that. He gets his little mini army of people to follow him around and be yes men to him. So, The idle, worthless people, the lowest of the low, the scum of society, nothing to lose, everything to gain from the success of a revolutionary movement. That's the type of people he's hired here. They're looking for success here, but off of Abimelech's effort and time. He hired yes men, surrounded himself with people who wanted him to be successful so that they would be successful. You ever seen that? Like, there was a study about rappers and NFL football players and NBA players and the amount of people that are around them. Yeah. And it's never like one person. And there was this thing, I think it was like 50 Cent or something like that. He like looked into his finances and he realized he was paying like 25 people's salaries for the year. And he was paying them like 200 grand a year. And he just wouldn't notice because he had so much money until the money was gone. And then when the money was gone, those guys were gone. And now he had 50 Cent in his wallet, broke, had nothing in there, had no one around him either. They were happy. You like that joke? It was good. I like that. Got Grace laughing. I'm happy. Boom. But think about that. Like, people are there to take until the taking's done, and there's nothing else to take anymore somehow. That's what these type of guys are. But Abimelech's got them. He's got his little army now. He's got his people to help him out. In verse 5, we can see that he goes to his father's house and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons on one stone. There were 70 of them. So right now, there's some bad math going on. Because he didn't slew 70, because that would mean he'd kill himself, right? So how many did he kill? 70 minus 1, what we got? Yay, there we go. And then it says, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Gideon, was left because he hid himself. So actually, how many people died? 68. We are good at math today. It's fantastic. I love it.
So 2 lived.
2 lived.
Himself and the youngest one.
Yeah, the youngest one hid, and he was the one that was doing the murdering. So 70 minus 2, we've got 68 left right there, okay? So we've got Abimelech killing his brothers with the support of his relatives on his mother's side. The men of Shechem supporting the plan also with finances and actually being there, those yes men. And notice that it wasn't because it was morally right. It was right for them, but it wasn't morally right. It wasn't good. It wasn't a beautiful thing. It was horrible. And only one stone, on one stone. What does that mean? What do you guys think? Do you think he ran around and hit people with one stone? Or maybe there was a sacrificing stone in the middle? What do you think, you guys?
The second one.
That's what it kind of sounds like to me, because that's what the Baal worshippers would do.
Exactly. So what's he doing here?
He's sacrificing them a Baal.
It's not even just murder. He is like tainting them by attaching them to a false god, using his own family as sacrifices. That's pretty aggressive, right? To a god that they just took money from. He sacrificed them on one stone. It sounds like they rounded them up, got them all into one spot, and one after the other, they were killed. It's pretty aggressive. And it was a couple of the commentaries said it potentially in revenge for the demolition of Baal's altar that happened on their father's property. Remember what Gideon did in that one night? He cut down that whole orchard and he smashed down the altar right there. So maybe that was a reason why he did it in this way. But either way, he killed them. He killed them all. So he had 70, minus Abimelech, minus Jotham, all the rest were gone. Okay? Verse 6, the men of Shechem make Abimelech their king. Why not? The dude just killed so many people. You can tell he's a pretty stable guy, clearly. No. What are we doing here? Like, he's got I don't know, this ego on him that he can come up and ask to be king, and then he goes and kills everyone who could say no, or who could oppose him, just so that he could be king. That doesn't sound like a good guy to follow. Yet they go, hey, you did what you say you're going to do. You can be king. Okay. And all of the men of Shechem, they gathered together, and all the house of Milo went and made Abimelech king. He made him king. It's almost hard to see and to tell what was worse here, and who did the worst decision. Abimelech, who did all the murdering, or the men of Shechem who approved of it. And this was an ungodly leader. right? He's not being led by God here. He's doing all that he wants to do. Given to an ungodly people who approve of all these ungodly actions. They've rejected God's leadership over the nation and embraced a cruel and brutal man. Gideon said, no, God should be king. Give him the throne. God should be king. And then literally the next chapter along, there's murder, there's a fight for thrones, there's a fight for power. It's not really a fight though. It's just one guy just taking it. And here's the funny part here. By the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. Why is that interesting? Anyone got any ideas? Another version, I think it was the ESV, it says by the terebinth tree at the pillar that was in Shechem. Terebinth tree. Abimelech's coronation to be king took place at the same tree where Joshua had placed a copy of the law of God. Joshua 24:26. Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God and took a great stone and set it there under an oak that was by the sanctuary of the Lord. That same tree. The law was right there. Right there. Could have been read. But they ignored it. God's leader, Joshua, who did all those things, they would have known about this tree. Why do you think it was this tree? Why do you think it was on that stone with this tree in this place? Abimelech knows what he's doing. He's not stupid. But what he's doing is slapping God in the face with all of these different things. I'm going to murder all my brothers, but I'm going to do it sacrificing it to a false god. Slap. I'm going to get coronated as king, even though you didn't lead me to be king, at this place where Joshua laid your law. Slap. And I'm going to lead these ungodly people and do a better job than you could. Slap. It's pretty disgusting. But it's right there. Israel had a choice here. Read the law or not. Follow God or Abimelech. Pretty easy choice for us to make because we can read the whole thing, right? But there's guys going through it right there. There's emotion. There's rash decisions. There's this guy's a really good talker. Or maybe I'm kind of scared because I just seen him kill all of his brothers. I don't know what he's going to do to me if I say no. There's justifiable reasons why people would have sided with Abimelech. But it wasn't healthy and it wasn't good. Okay? Second section here, the warning from Jotham, verses 7 through 15, says this, and when they told it to Jotham, he went and stood in the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice and cried and said unto them, Hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. The trees went forth in a time to anoint a king over them. And they said unto the olive tree, Reign thou over us. But the olive tree said unto them, Shall I leave my fatness, wherewith by me they honour God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? And the tree said to the fig tree, Come thou and reign over us. But the fig tree said unto them, Shall I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to be promoted over the trees? Then said the trees unto the vine, Come thou and reign over us. And the vine said unto them, Should I leave my wine, which cheereth God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? Then said all the trees unto the bramble, Come thou and reign over us. And the bramble said unto the trees, If in truth ye anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. And if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Okay. This is a parable about trees and about leadership and choosing the right king, okay? But it's Jotham's warning to the men of Shechem. So verse 7 we got, now what they told Jotham. Jotham has ran, he's escaped this massacre at the stone, so Judges 9:5, that's where the massacre was. And here he told a parable to rebuke the men of Shechem for their choice of Abimelech as king. He made this speech at the top of Mount Gerizim, the mountain from which Israel heard the blessings of God pronounced upon them. Think about Deuteronomy 11:29, Deuteronomy 27:12, and Joshua 8:33. So they had these blessings told upon them, all those people who were obeying God, all those people who were following God, and it was about 150 years ago. So 150 years before this thing happened, this mountain is pretty significant. That tree was pretty significant. Even that stone that he used, all of it's kind of significant. But notice what he says. hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. What does that mean? Anyone know what the word hearken means? Anyone got any guesses?
Isn't it like listen but also like act on it?
Yeah. Listen and apply. So with this we have, listen to me, men of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. Does that make sense? I think it kind of does. Because if they can humble themselves and listen to Jephthah in this moment, right? Then they can humble themselves a little bit more, and God will start listening to them because of their humility. That sounds kind of funny, but I think it's a change of heart thing that happens here. He's the youngest son, lowest of the low, right? We already know about David and what happens with him. You know, the youngest person gets the worst job, right? And now he's the only one standing now. So is he now the youngest? No, he's technically the only other one apart from Abimelech, which is brutal. But Jotham's got this chance now to say, change your heart. God will hear you. Change the way you are. Change. Repent. There's an opportunity here for you to turn back. Hearken unto me, you men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. Something about this that always makes me kind of wonder is just about that change of heart and the opportunity that we have when God presents someone in front of you to share a message. And are you willing to listen? Are you listening to what God has for you, or are you just listening to words? Are you there just because you want to be there, or you've been forced to be there, or are you actually applying the message yourself? I think that's kind of what Jotham's saying here, is like, listen, but actually really listen. Don't just let this go in here. Let it go in here and change so that things can change for you later on. I don't know. Maybe I'm going wide on that. What do you think?
No, that's 100%, I think. You gotta humble yourself.
Yeah.
Turn back to God, and God will be with you again.
Right. I think it's that repentance of 180. What do you think? Yeah.
And sometimes you can't hear it directly from God. You need someone else to be like, hey,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Listen.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's really, really specific that Mount Gerizim is used here. Because so many times has this mount been used to declare something over people who are being obedient to God. So, yeah, it's not a pattern that is just random. This is a real significant moment here. They could choose to follow, or they could choose to turn away. And I think having, again, another opportunity for repentance is a big deal. So, this weird parable about trees, okay? The trees went forth to anoint a king. Do trees anoint kings? Are we talking about trees here, or what are we talking about, Eli?
I think we're talking about the men of Shechem.
Right? Different types of people, right? Different quality of people, different quality of trees, right? You wouldn't use some of these woods to build stuff with. You would use it as firewood, or you'd use it as, for barrels and stuff like that for different things. You wouldn't use it all for the same stuff. You've got different types of wood. That's kind of how I see this, right? So the trees went forth to anoint a king over them. In this parable told by Jotham, the worthy trees, the olive, the fig, and the vine don't want to be king. Why? Because they know who should be king. Those people know who should be king, who should be put in that rightful place. But notice the unworthy bramble agrees to be king. So the promise of the bramble to take shelter in my shade was ironic, ridiculous. Anyone seen brambles before? How much shade does a bramble cast? Pretty low to the ground. When you're walking like over hills and stuff like that, and you have to like go through the kind of wild bush, brambles are the things that come up to the sides here. You can't really get under them because there's thorns everywhere. And you walk through, and they're the things that scratch you up. And it's like, trust my shadow. I'm not getting in your shadow. It's dangerous in there. I'm going to get cut. So, how does a tree get shade from a bramble bush? It can. So that's the funny, ironic thing about this parable, okay? So we have this thing, come and be king. Come and reign over us. And we see the response from the olive tree, should I leave my fatness? It's kind of funny. Olive trees being fat. If something is fat, what does that mean?
Unhealthy.
Unhealthy or well-fed. Okay? You feed up a pig, you make it so it's ready to be eaten, stuff like that. But if it's well-fed, you typically wouldn't leave your source. We see that with people, they always come back. So the olive tree didn't want to reign over them It's kind of comfortable where it was, right? Should I leave my fatness where by me they honor God and man? So in this place, we're honoring God and we're still honoring man, but honoring God. Next, verse 10, the fig tree. Come, reign over us. And the fig tree said, should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit and go to be promoted over the trees? My sweetness, my good fruit. Lots of in like them, me, right? But healthy fruit, that's a good sign. That means it's well looked after. Ground is good, producing good things. Why would the tree leave the area that's given so much where the fruit is really healthy? That makes sense. Verse 12, jump to the vine. Reign over us, vine. Should I leave my wine, which cheereth God and man? Which cheereth God and man. Again, this is not the same excuse here. It's the wine, the thing that's producing, is cheering up God in that sense, or cheering God, honoring God, pleasing God. The olive tree back there was, should I leave my fatness, wherewith by me they honor God and man. They use the olive tree to honor God. But the thing that comes out of the vine, the wine, the grapes when they get pressed, pleases God. So he's saying, why would I leave when the fruit that I'm producing, it's not just by me, it's not just me. Actually, the thing that God's doing here is producing something that pleases him. So it's kind of a cool thing, because it's like number 1 and number 2 goes into number 3. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys or not, but I kind of smiled whilst I was reading it. I was like, oh man. But it was all about God. It's about God. It's about the process. It's about how God provides, the pleasing of God instead of man. Why would I leave this place that pleases God for a role of reigning over men? That makes no sense. And then you get the bramble bush. Verse 14. Come reign over us, bramble bush. Verse 15, bramble said, hey, what? I don't have to be on the floor anymore? I don't have to be the low guy anymore? I can be the top dog? Are you kidding me? Of course I'll take it. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of what it says, you know. If in truth you anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. If you're going to actually give me this, okay, but you got to live in my shadow. You got to trust in my shadow. You got to trust me. And if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. The bramble warned that he would be an oppressive ruler. He'd be oppressive and destroy anyone who disagreed with him.
That's what Gideon used to rake across.
Yeah.
They say, I'll come back and drag these brambles across your body and cut your flesh open. That's the same sort of thing he's talking about.
Brambles and briars.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. So I think the thing about this is you can see the attitude of the bramble bush here, which is representing a person. And it's funny because he's saying, hey, if you're going to trust me, know that this is what's going to happen. Know that there's going to be this line that I'm going to tow you along. Know it's going to be this way. Verse 15, he says, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Are we still talking about trees here, or are we talking about people? We're talking about people now, right? We're talking about a strong people group, and he's saying, hey, if you don't trust me, I'm going to come out and I'm going to devour. I'm going to come and take over. I'm going to destroy. Something to think about this is one test of a character of a man is to see how he treats those who disagree with him. If you have a person who disagrees with you, how do you feel? How do you feel about that? Are you okay with them disagreeing with you? Test it. See. If his only desire is to put you down, to destroy you, he's kind of like the bramble in this situation. No real substance for good here. Don't be around those people. The bramble doesn't really produce anything of value. It's a menace of a plant to farmers instead of a blessing, you know? It's the condensed version of this whole parable, by the way, is basically that weak, worthless, wicked men will always want and be willing to put themselves into powerful positions and bring ruin upon those around them who allow them to be in those situations. So watch out for that, okay? Question for you, who have you given a position of power to in your life? Who's got that? Who's the bramble? If you've got a bramble, get rid of it. It's a weed. Section 3 here, 16 to 21. Applying the parable. Okay. Now therefore, if ye have done truly and sincerely in that ye have made Abimelech king, and if ye have dwelt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done unto him according to the deserving of his hands, for my father fought for you, and adventured his life far, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian, and ye are risen up against my father's house this day, and have slain his sons, 70 persons, upon one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, king over those men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If ye have then dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice ye in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech, and devour the men of Shechem and the house of Millo, and let fire come out of the men of Shechem and the house of Millo, and devour Abimelech. Verse 21, and Jotham ran away, fled, and went to Beer, and dwelt there for the fear of Abimelech, his brother. Okay? So verse 16 and 21, basically Jotham applies this parable. The city of Shechem will be repaid for choosing such a king. For choosing such a person. This is what's going to happen. And it's kind of funny. Verse 16, if you've done truly and sincerely, if you've acted in truth and in sincerity, if what you actually have done here and what you believe is true and sincere, that's kind of a good point to start off. If you think this is the right way to do things, Jotham's raised this for the sake of an argument. He didn't believe that 68 of his brothers were murdered for the sake of truth and sincerity. Right? He believed they were murdered for a bad reason. Did you act in truth when your brothers were murdered, when you made them king? Did you act in sincerity when you rounded them all up and led them to the stone? Did you act in truth and sincerity in everything that you've done here? Why are you even here? You're hired hands. Are you acting in truth and sincerity? This challenge in verse 17, remember what my father Gideon did for you. He had ventured out far. He battled for good, delivered you out of the hand of Midian. Remember all these things. How did you forget so fast? And I love it because he points it back and he says, remember what happened there. And you remember what you've done. And remember who you killed or who you helped kill. Remember who you've put in charge. And remember how opposite he is to what happened before. Sometimes people who get in power don't want you looking back. They want you to focus forward. Abimelech doesn't mention much about Gideon. He just mentions, I'm your flesh. I'm your bone. Choose me, and we'll go forward. We'll have a better life. That's not the case. Verse 18, you rose up against my father's house this day. You slay his sons, and you made Abimelech king. Why? Because he's your brother. That's it. Because he's your brother. But there were 69 other people that you could have chose. But he got rid of those, right? 68 of them. The real reason the men of Shechem supported Abimelech was because he was their brother. Abimelech's mother, though, was a maidservant, Gideon. She was from Shechem, and Abimelech probably grew up then in Shechem. Judges 8:31 points to Gideon with his many wives and children. And Abimelech's mother was called a maidservant, which was a term that usually referred to a servant in the house who was also a concubine. So a concubine was a mistress, a sexual partner who was expected to basically bear children. That was your job. You're there to clean the house, make some food, and have babies. That's your job. Make my family line bigger, expand my family tree. That was what they're there for. And then he points back to 19 again. So he's basically saying, this is who Abimelech is. This is where Abimelech's come from. This is why you chose him. This is the only reason, because he's from your area. And then it gets to 19. To go swing straight back around again. If you dealt truly and sincerely. Again, that phrase. Truly and sincerely. What is morally true and sincere in this whole situation? Nothing. Nothing is true. Nothing is moral. Nothing is sincere. And they're saying, if you have anything in there that you think is true and sincere, then you should rejoice in your choice. You should be happy with who you chose. But if you have any doubts, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. But he was, like they say, you should rejoice in Abimelech, and he will also rejoice in you because he knows there's been, you trust him, he trusts you. This is great. Verse 20, but if not, let fire come from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem. Jotham's warning to the men of Shechem was that their unwise choice would come back to hurt them. He predicted that fire would come forth from Abimelech and devour them. And after this bold warning, he legged it. He was out of here, okay? For fear of his life, understandably, right? These men are the ones that have just rounded up and voted in Abimelech to be king and killed all of his brothers. So of course he's going to run. But this prediction, it doesn't take place for another 3 years. But it would come true. What a warning. Watch out for the man you put in charge. He cannot be trusted. And then because of the threat on his life, he had to get out of there. Verse 21. Final verse here. Jotham ran away and fled. He ran to safety but feared the reaction of his brother Abimelech. And this village, and here it says Bir, or El Bereh, was on the ridge of the north land around Jerusalem. So not too far from where he's been. But the whole point about this is he fled to a place that was far away enough. But it was a good place to be. Guys, who we put in charge around us, who we allow to speak into our lives, who we vote to have power in our lives is a big deal. And this whole story, this whole account of Abimelech, it's scary because you see this happen in politics. You see this happen in households. You see this happen in churches. You see the person who's got the most passion or strength or money. But are they pursuing God? People get put in power for different reasons. Abimelech, I truly believe that Abimelech was put in power because people were scared. They saw what he did to his relatives, to the people that he was meant to love, to the people that he was meant to look after, to his family who were trying to honor his father and continue the family tree, and he was just like, I'm just going to kill him to get a leg up in society. I truly believe that people were scared of him. If there is someone in your life that you are generally scared of that is in your life and talking over you, address that. Don't go up to them and, try and fight them or anything like that, but pray about wisdom. Pray about how to get out of that situation. Because it's really important that you know that that's not the way it's meant to be. God puts people into our lives for reasons. And sometimes it's to learn that you don't need those type of people in your life for reasons. Other times it's because they're good people. And God wants you around good people. But that's kind of what this points to for me. And for Jotham to be that scared for his life, there's a reason for that fear. Because the guy's already killed your brothers. Guys, we're finishing at verse 21 here. I've got 3 final thoughts for you. And then we'll be setting up for 22 to 57 next week, okay? But the first thought I've got for you here, who are you surrounding yourself with? Abimelech chose yes men. I've already told you, yes men are very dangerous. You need a person in your life to say no to you. To say that's a stupid idea. To say, have you prayed about it? Are you asking God about what to do? Not even just to say no. Not even just to say don't be an idiot. But are you choosing Jesus in this decision, or are you choosing yourself? Because that's a really important thing. Think about if Abimelech had chose one of his brothers to be his second in charge. Did you think it's a good idea to go and kill all my brothers to get a leg up on thing? I don't think the brother would have been saying yes. I think he would have probably been like, are you kidding me? They're your family. Why would you do that? He chose yes men who didn't ever say no. Who never said anything against what he could do because they wanted a foot up in society as well. His victory meant their victory. That's not true friendship. That's not good for you. Who you surround yourself with impacts your spiritual, impacts your physical, your emotional, your mental state, all of it. But specifically, it affects your spiritual. It will pull you away from God. If you surround yourself with people who do not believe in Jesus Christ, that Jesus isn't their top priority, they will pull you away, or they will try to. Do not surround yourself with people like that. It's good to have stretch people. I go to the gym, we go to jiu-jitsu. Not everyone's a Christian there. But you know what I do? I don't take their advice seriously. I don't let them speak into my life. Like, you don't know Jesus. Why would I ask you about your opinion on this situation? You know, it just makes sense. Don't allow people who are not following Jesus to speak into your life with such power and such strength, like it's going to actually change how you live. Don't let that happen. If they're not following Jesus, forget the advice. Because it's worldly advice, not God's advice. Okay? It might help you now, but in the future in heaven, you can look at that and maybe think, that was a waste of time, okay? Make sure you're getting advice from the right people. Make sense? Second one, are you living in truth? In sincerity? I love that phrase. Because it's tough. Is everything that you're doing because it's standing for the truth? And are you doing it in full sincerity? Are you really sincere about this stuff? That's tough. I can honestly say to you, like, no, I don't do it. I don't do it wholeheartedly in truth and in sincerity because it's tough. But when you're looking at God, that's the best place it can be. When you're looking to choose and follow Him, He brings out the truth. He brings out your sincereness in your heart. He changes that rock that's in there to a pumping a heart instead, right? He brings you life. The closer you get to God, the closer it's going to be you're walking in truth and in light. The further away you are, it's going to be darkness. I love that phrase. Are you living, is it true? Is it sincere? Ooh. Third one, who are you letting having a position of power in your life? Who are you letting have power in your life? Who are you letting speak into your life? Kind of ties into the first one, but also who are you letting stand over you and say, I'm in charge? You're going to have choices in your life when you grow up, and you might not stay at Spokane Baptist Church. And I say this often, but if you don't, it'll be sad to see you go. But if you do go, make sure you find a Bible teaching church. Make sure your lead pastor is not driving a brand new Jaguar. He's not walking in with Yeezys on or anything like that. He is at your level. That he's not lording over you for how good he looks. I drive a 2002 Dodge Ram that I've only just fixed. My wife drives a 2004 Lexus. Pastor Josh drives a minivan. Okay? Like, we are not rich people. We are at your level. And that means a lot, because what we're doing there is it means that we're not just taking our finances and living for the world. Okay? You go to a church, and they've got the nicest shoes, the shiniest jacket. If the place looks fantastic and they've got the light show and the smoke, that's fine, whatever you want it. But if they're not talking to you about Jesus, and if your pastor's not looking like he's someone who is following Jesus' example here, do not give them power in your life. Every time you invite someone to speak, you're giving them power. Every time you ask an opinion of someone, you're giving them an opportunity to speak power into your life. Or lies. If it's not the power of Jesus, if it's not God's word, then I'm sorry, it's worldly and chances are it's lies. So, Abimelech here did a lot of that. Next week we're going to find out about what happens to Abimelech. Again, it's not too good. If you want to read ahead, please do. But that is Judges 9, part 1, so up to verse 21. Next week, 22 through 57.